Welcome to my vlogs Love Ultras. I'm John Kynaston and this is episode 42. It's been a bit of a while since I did number 41, which was early July, so I thought it's about time I did a little bit of a catch up on what I've been doing. And for this next number of months I'm really going to be building up to the Dragon's Back race next year, and that race is now 29.5 weeks away, so looking forward to that next May. But it's very much in my thoughts, in my training and what I'm seeking to do. And what I thought I'd do for this vlog is just to give a little recap of the last few months, and in particular how my training has been in preparation for the Dragon's Back. In some ways it's too far away to really feel as though I'm training specifically for it, but it's in my mind. I'm certainly doing things this year in preparation for next year. I think my main training physically is for the Dragon's Back is going to be from January onwards, but this 6 months before is very much a chance to recce some of the route and also practice one or two other things as well. So just to start with, I thought I'd just do a little recap of my training and what I've done in July and August and September and into October. So the next little bit is just me looking through my spreadsheet and just showing some of the big key races or key training that I've done in preparation and for the Dragon's Back, and particularly in this year. So since my last LOVEUltras vlog, this is my training, how it's looked like, building up to the Dragon's Back. So this week, July, I did my first recce weekend with Andy. That's that one. I'll talk about that a bit more. And then Katrina and myself had a 6 days on the TMB on the Tour de Mont Blanc. So that was that one. Then we had a Kilpatrick's run. Katrina ran the Devil's Race and I did a bit of a recce sort of support run, so I ran a couple of times. I did a Bob Graham recce there with my friend Cami where we did leg 3, so that was just over 14 miles. And then middle of August we did day 2 of the Dragon's Back of the course, so that was that one. And then a couple of weeks later I did the Ring of Fire 3-day race. I'll mention these a little bit later on, those big events. And then we had a few easy weeks then, and then I did a Ben Lomond run on that one, and then the Dunoon 33 a couple of weeks ago, and then just did that run this morning at lunchtime today. And then I'm going to run Wednesday, and then I've got day 3 of the Dragon's Back recce with Andy Cole on this coming weekend. Then we've got a run on Arran with a group called the Glee Club that we run regularly with. And then my last ultra of the year, the Hardwalls 80 miler on the 24th of November. So that will be basically my last race of this year. So that's my training since I last spoke and on these videos. So as you can see from that little video, I've had certain key weekends, certain key runs that I've done. And I thought for this next part, I would just basically just do a little chat about the 3 key weekends that I've been involved in preparation for the Dragon's Back. So recce 1, which was the weekend 1, which is for day 1, and then we did another recce for day 2, and then the Ring of Fire race. So the first recce weekend was that in July, and that was on the 7th and 8th of July. My good friend Andy Cole, and then we met. I drove down, met in Chester, then went across to Llanberis where Andy has with his Chester Mountaineering Club has a hut there, so we used that as a base, and we basically covered day 1 over 2 days. So the first day we went from Conway to Penny Pass Youth Hostel, which was just over 23 miles. And then the next day we went from there to the campsite, which is Nantgwynnant, and that was just over 10 miles. So over the weekend, say we covered the whole route. And I must admit, we had brilliant weather, absolutely superb. blue skies the whole way, so it was incredible. So we could see for miles. I've done a few walks and runs up in that area in Snowdon, and you don't often get it as good as we had it. So put some pictures on here that you can see, and it's just incredible, just the views that we had, and made navigation so much easier because you can see where you were going, and it was pretty straightforward. I would say that I learnt a lot in that first day, and it is a tough first day. If you just did that day on its own, then I think it would be a pretty challenging ultra in its own right. But knowing that you've got days 2 to 5 straight after it means that you have to, well, for me anyway, I've really got to pace myself well. I want to be inside the cutoffs to give myself time, but also I don't want to be hammering myself because I know I've got a big days coming up in the next few days as well. The initial climb was fairly straightforward up onto the Clwades, and then once you'd made that climb, then there was a sort of quite a good runnable part where you were down and climb and down and climb, and then there's a big drop down into Ogwyn, which was quite tough on the legs. That's where the drop bag will be, and the time place. And then you've got, I would say, a tough section where it's a climb up Trevan, and that's quite a rocky climb, especially the last 1,000 feet or so. And then you've got a steep descent, and then you've got to climb up onto the Glidders. And that first one particularly is on very scree ground, and I found that quite tough going. So it's almost have 2 steps forward and 1 step back, so that was a bit of a challenge making your way over that one. And then from there you drop down into the youth hostel, and that's where we stopped overnight. And then the next day we did basically the Snowdon Horseshoe. Again, beautiful weather, climb up Crib Goch, across the ridge there. Again, it was fairly straightforward and clear weather, even though you can see the drops on both sides, but it could well be different on race day, but it was good to cover that. Over Cribby Discal, even though it's changed its name now, over Snowdon, and then Llewellyn, and then down to the campsite. And that first day, that first Recce weekend, gave me a really good idea that this is going to be a tough event. Normally I'm quite comfortable inside the cut-offs of a race. Normally I'm in the top half, if not the top third of a race, but I've got a feeling this one's going to be pushing me to my limit, and I am going to be nearer the end of the field. So I just want to make sure, get an idea of just how much I need to do. So that was Recce weekend 1, and then the second weekend we did in, as the dates here, the 18th and 19th of August, and we did day 2, and again did the same thing, drove down, met with Andy, went across to the mountain hut in Llanberis, and then we did the day 2 over 2 days. To make it easier for logistics, we drove a bit and then had to finish and then do sort of a 1.5 miles back to the car, but that worked out quite well. And this time the weather was the opposite. It started off not too bad, but there was clouds on the hills, and once we got about 1,500 feet up, it was just in cloud, and we were in cloud for the whole day and for the second day as well, so we could hardly see anything, which, even though that was tough on the day, it was probably good preparation for the race, because it could well be like that. And sometimes if you do all your recce's in good weather and then it's bad weather on the race day, you don't know what to do. So even though it was tough, it was actually quite good. And it meant that I was relying a bit more heavily on my Sunto watch with the breadcrumb line, and using obviously the Harvey map as well. But there was one bit where we did a complete loop and came back to the same place. We probably 3/4 of a mile or so, but it just shows you how easy it was. I find with the breadcrumb line on the Sunto, it's fine when you're on it, but if you're off it, then it gets a bit confusing, because it's forever moving around and you can't quite see. So I think in mist probably would really help to get the compass out and actually have a compass line as well, so that you know generally this is the direction you're going. So that would work well with the crumb line. But even though the second day was it was further, but it was not as much climbing, the ground was really tough. You've got a lot of grassy ground to go over with no real path. You've got a lot of rocky ascents and some really tricky descents as well. So overall it was a pretty tough day, and I think I can see why that is a day where it does catch people out. Having done a tough first day, then you've got that second day, which is a lot of climbing, a lot of descending on tough ground. There are some runnable bits when you go past the Festinio Railway. There's a few miles there that you can get a bit of a run going, so that will be good to know that's coming. But there are some big climbs after it as well. The path off Differs is quite a tricky one, and again Andy showed me the good line, so I think I've got that quite in my mind where I need to do, because if you miss it then there's a lot of brackeny ground, whereas if you can get that line there's a lovely path that takes you all the way down to the forest and then down into the overnight camp. So again, that was a really good day, really good weekend, and in different weather, but gave me a really good idea. The paths though were just underwater. Andy's done that route a few times, and he was saying there's some paths that are normally bone dry. They were like little rivers, so absolutely soaked. I did try some Drymax socks out, not Drymax, sealskin socks out, hoping that they would keep the water out completely, but the ones I had didn't work too well. And I thought my feet were wet, and when I finished, took the socks off and just poured the water out. So I'll need to experiment a little bit more with those. I did buy 2 pairs, and I think they were the cheaper ones, so I'm going to try out the more expensive ones this weekend when we do our day 3 recce. So that was the 2 recces, and for the first 2 days. And I say I'm feeling quite good about the fact that I've got a clear idea of what I need to do. It's given me a real sense of how tough this race is going to be, just the relentlessness of it, that you just need to keep moving. It's for the likes of myself, it's going to be a really fast hike, I think, to be able to keep going at that pace and be able to beat the cut-offs and be fresh enough to be able to tackle the next day. So that was those 2 days. And then the third thing I wanted to mention that was on the training there was the Ring of Fire race, which I did at the end of August. And I really wanted to do this race last year, but I had a tendon injury and couldn't run, so I was keen to go back. But one of the key things I was wanting to do was to do a stage race. I've done 43, 44 ultras now, but that was the first time I've done a stage race. I've done longer races, but the continuous races where it's up to you when you sleep, and you tend to sleep less. So for this one, I really wanted to see what it was like to do a 3-day ultra. And Ring of Fire was perfect. It was a beautiful route right round the Anglesey. Again, we had good weather. But it meant that on the Friday afternoon, Friday from 1 o'clock, you did 35 miles. The Saturday was 65, and then the Sunday was another 35 to make 135 altogether. And it was that sense of having run, for the first day it took me 8 hours 18, and then finished about 20 past 9 at night, and then by 6 in the morning you're running again, and you've got 65 miles. It took me 17 hours 40, so I finished about 20 to midnight, and then again trying to recover and then get ready for 6 o'clock for the final day. And I think I felt really encouraged, to be honest, by it, because I didn't know how my body would cope with that, whether I'd be able to recover enough. But I really felt I was on top of it, and it was encouraging. There was 68 started the full race. I was 36th on the first day, I was 22nd on the second day, the long day, and I was 19th on the third day, and I finished 21st overall. So that encouraged me that I was able to have a long day and then have a bit of a sleep and then be able to run again the next day. And I say that gave me some things to think about, things that I need to do in preparation for the Dragon's Back. But I'm really glad that I've done a stage race, as I think it did just give me a sense of what it's going to be like and what I need to do to be able to recover and to get ready for that. After that, I also did a Dunoon Ultra, which is 33 miles. That was a week last Saturday, and enjoyed that one. And then this weekend is day 3 of the Dragon's Back Recce with Andy, so looking forward to that one. And then my last race of the year is the Hard Walls 80, which is on the 24th of November, which goes from Kynaston to Filey. So again, looking forward to that one. That's going to be my last race of this year. Those three things I've mentioned, day 1 Recce, day 2 Recce and the Ring of Fire, I did make separate videos of those, so if you want to watch those, go to my YouTube channel, John Kynaston, and you'll be able to find those on there as well. Also, I'm wearing my Dragon's Back training weekend training t-shirt, which they send us, which is very smart. So again, that's been enjoying wearing that and feeling as though I'm a Dragon's Back in training. So that's just a little bit of a recap of the last few months, and over the next few months I will be doing some more vlogs talking about my preparation for the Dragon's Back and also the different things I've been doing. So I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll catch up with you next time.